Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and we're having another one of our discussions with the candidates for the coming election in Beverly. And tonight, the guest is Rich Tabbut, who is running for Councilor at Large.
Yes, thank you for having me, George.
Yeah, so it's got to be a kind of a crowded field, and I guess the issue comes down to what's driving you to run.
There's many things that drive me to run. Originally, what happened was I'm a lifelong Beverly resident. I'm a veteran. And what happened was my daughter she's a lifelong Beverly resident, and she couldn't afford to live in Beverly anymore. She had to move to Lynn. And she couldn't afford to buy a house in Beverly, and that really upset me. And also, I've been in Beverly a long time. I know the city. I'm concerned about where the city is going right now. And I find that the city right now is being built. I think we're building a little bit too much right now, and the city's getting too congested. It seems wherever you go in the city, you can't drive anywhere. I live on Stony Road, which is behind Flair's Cleaners, and we can't even get out of our street now because the traffic is so bad. Yeah. And so what I'm finding is I'm really concerned about the direction the city's going. And also, one of the things I'm disturbed about.
Well, where do you think the city is going?
I think the city is becoming. I am happy with the way the city is financially. I'm a financial person. I think financially it's going very well. But I do believe that we have to. I don't mind. I do support equity and inclusion. I do support people moving in. But what I found out recently is the city population has gone up from like 38,000 to 41,000 and continues to grow. And I'm just concerned that eventually we're not going to be able to drive anywhere in the city. It's going to take us like 20 minutes to get from one end of the city to the other. And that concerns me because I'm running on quality of life issues. And also, one of the things that advantage I have over some of the other people I'm running against is I'm retired. And I live on a fixed income, and I know what it means to live on a fixed income. I mean, my wife's a teacher at St. Pius and Lynn, and I feel that, it's kind of hard to describe in a few words, but basically, I feel like the city needs a little bit more guidance from somebody who has experience living in the city.
Well, I think you mentioned early on that your daughter's having a problem finding affordable housing in Beverly. She had to move to Lynn. Yeah. And yet at the same time, I think you're concerned that we're overbuilding. That seems to be inconsistent.
Well, what I'm talking about is larger developments, like large developments. In other words, I have nothing against. In other words, I don't want to bring more cars into the city. So in other words, one of the things I like to see down is make it easy to have in-law apartments in the city. Because I'm getting older now, and I have actually my house in Stony Road. We have something we can make into an in-law apartment. There's a lot of regulations regarding that. And one of the things I found in the city is there seems to be a little too much regulation. Like for example, I can give you an example. My wife and I have been married 35 years last May, and we wanted to replace an above-ground swimming pool with another swimming pool. And we had to go in front of the Conservation Commission. I mean, I had to go through an application to the Conservation Commission because I live next to wetlands. I was replacing a pool with a small footprint. And the other pool, I couldn't even get it installed till July. And our anniversary was in May, and I started in March. Yeah. So, I'm concerned that we're making it too difficult to live in the city. The city should be serving us, and we shouldn't have to serve the city with everything we do. In other words, what I find too, sometimes I call city offices. I think we have fine employees in the city, but sometimes I call city offices and I don't get replies, and no one calls me back. I find that when I went to city council meetings, I found that a lot of times people didn't know about the meetings because we don't have the technology to promote the meetings, so people don't know when we have meetings. And there's all sorts of issues like that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think you touch on one of my concerns is the issue that you mentioned. You're retired, you got a big house, you'd like to stay in Beverly, and several councilors and several people we've discussed that with have mentioned that there's hardly any options left. And we've had Andrew DeFrenza on the show. He runs Harbor Light. I always like to give him a little bit of a commercial break because they're doing such good work for the city. But with the available housing, there are people on the list that won't last long enough to get onto the top of the list because of the priorities. So there is a major disconnect, I feel, between the levels of housing that we have and I think this is one of the issues I'd like to see some city councilor take on, and it sounds like it's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in. Of how do we get housing that people can afford?
Well, I think what we do is ask in a mixture of housing. That's what you're referring to, the mixture. Like, right now, I think we might have a little bit too much high-end housing, and I think we need to have a mixture of senior citizens. So I think maybe I wouldn't mind seeing more senior citizen development. I think that would be a good thing for the city, and things for moderate-income people. So maybe we could do, like, instead of doing like huge developments, maybe we could do like more community-based developments, like maybe something on a smaller scale, where the people wouldn't feel overwhelmed, but they could live and have a good quality of life. I mean, I don't have all the answers, but that's the sort of direction I would go in.
So that implies that we'd have to do something with the zoning.
Yeah, exactly.
You comfortable with changing the zoning?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I am comfortable changing the zoning. I mean, I think that, one of the things I find, I go to city council meetings, I mean, I think we have fine civil servants and that sort of thing. I know they have discussions. I haven't been in all discussions. But I think we need to have alternative voices and alternative, like viewpoints. Like I said, I grew up in the city and I've lived in the city my whole life, so I feel I know the city very well. I mean, I was born in Dartmouth Street in 1958. I was out of city a little while to go to college, but I was in the National Guard. I'm a veteran of the Army National Guard of Massachusetts. I paid my own way through school. So I think what I want to try is to get people together. And I find that a lot of times, because of we do deal with local issues, but I find a lot of times the national issues get involved with local issues. And really what I want to do is I want to serve people, I want to listen, I want to learn. A lot of listening, which doesn't come naturally to me because I'm kind of hyperactive. But I'm learning on the go. And that's what I want to do. I think I have something to give, and that's why I'm running for the city council.
Well, you mentioned the dichotomy between national issues and local issues. We've seen some activity in the city with the school department making it a sanctuary school. Yeah. There's a lot of activity going on right now with issues about race. And we've got two directors of equity in the system, one for City Hall and another one for the school department. And I guess the question we'd like to know about is, what's exactly the problem that Beverly is facing, and what's your perception on it?
I'm not sure it's a Beverly issue. I have a friend of mine who lives in Lynn, Massachusetts. I'm not going to give her name out, so I'm not sure she wanted her name revealed, but I was talking to her, and she was buying a house, actually, in Lynn, and she found out that when she bought a house that people are giving lower offers to people that are whites than people that were African American. So I do believe it's a problem in this country still.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I do believe that, and I'm glad Beverly does have. I mean, I wasn't aware we had two equity directors, but I know we have at least one. I approve of that. And my wife's actually teaches at St. Pius School in Lynn. One of their things is be kind, do your best. I think that's really what we have to do. I mean, the problem that I find is it's a very difficult issue, but I fully support equity. I fully support equity for everyone, and but I do believe Beverly. Beverly's actually pretty good. I mean, Beverly does have over 10% affordable housing, I believe, and but Beverly is good. But I think that we can always do better, and we should strive to do better.
Yeah. Well, again, my hang up with that is there's two kinds of housing. There's the quote affordable housing that meets the state requirements, and I think you have to have something like $75,000 or $76,000 family income.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
To qualify for that. Yeah. And then there's housing that people can afford. And back to the issue that your daughter is facing, that we've had one of the candidates for the city council last cycle around, and she was making the same statement. She graduated from college and had a teacher's degree, had a good job, and she had to get a roommate because she couldn't afford a apartment in the city. So it's not a new problem, it's a residual one.
It's a very difficult issue because, I mean, what's happening is housing pricing all over North Shore, and Beverly's one of the fastest growing communities in North Shore, is my understanding. So I think always in life there has to be balance, and things are a little bit out of balance right now. I think what's going to happen eventually when COVID dies down, I think housing prices will come down a bit. But I think we have to be proactive. In other words, we all want our kids to be able to afford to live in the city we grew up in.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. I had one of the discussions with he's a building contractor I know from the Y, and I was asking him about the price of lumber, and it has not come down,
Yeah.
but the lumber futures have come down. So
That's
they're
good.
projecting the next cutting of the trees and the milling and all that stuff will be back closer to what we consider normal prices. But
Yeah.
the stuff that's in the system now is fixed. And I think this is one of the problems that we're going to have to face to get through this transition from now to when we stop worrying about COVID as a one and only issue in life.
Well, I think Beltway is a very desirable community right now because we're right on the commuter rail, on the highway. Now with COVID, you can work locally. My daughter was actually just got a new job. She's working at Abiomed, and she was working in Mass General in the cancer center, and she got a job and she got a fairly large increase. But she's even with the increase, she still couldn't afford to live in Beltway.
Yeah.
So I agree with you totally. I mean, there's a gap between the affordable housing for people that need that, but what do you do for the people like my daughter and people like that who want to stay in Beltway? And it's a very difficult question. There are no easy answers, but we at least have to address the issue.
Yeah.
We can't sweep it under the rug. We have to address the issue. And if I'm elected, hopefully, well, I'm going to sound confident. When I do get elected, I am going to address that issue. I am going to bring that up. And I think it's a very important issue for the city of Beltway.
Well, that gets us to another area of what kind of influence can the city council have?
Well, that's one of the questions. I think that's an interesting question too. Is I know you asked the question of one of the other councilors running for office about whether we should have a town manager or a mayor. I agree. I think we still should have a mayor, but I think there has to be more of a balance of powers between the mayor and the city council. And I think that, I'm not sure. Brendan works in town management, so he probably knows more firsthand knowledge. Mm-hmm. But one of the things my campaign slogan is a voice for common sense. Mm-hmm. And what I think is I was a financial manager. I worked for small business, so I have a business background. I was a cost accounting manager and controller. So I think what I can do in all the different budgets in the city, I want to see the budgets and I want to have more time. But the mayor actually is the one that can propose, as far as I know, can propose a budget. And that's a question I think that we need to address sometime when we do the state charter. I mean, I guess I'm not sure when the state charter commission ends, but that's not something I'll have to look into. But I think there has to be a balance. In other words, I mean, we do want to have a strong executive. Sometimes there's emergencies, but we also need to have a strong city council. It needs to be balanced. It needs to be almost like the federal government, where there's 3 branches of the government. There's 2 branches in Beltway, and it needs to be balanced.
Yeah, that's one of the things that bothers me about the strong mayor, relatively weak city council. The only power the city council really has is to veto the budget.
Right.
So it's awful hard to compromise if all you got is one big stick that you can swing, yeah, and you can't do anything in between.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on
don't get me wrong. I mean,
where would you put the balance point between the...
Well, I think what we have to do, I mean, I think Brennan brought it up when he was here last time. I think like a lot of times the budget comes in very late in the year and there's only a few weeks to review it. I think we need a budget to come in earlier. And I think that city council, I mean, what we need is people with, I mean, Brennan has a financial background. I have a financial background. I think we need more people. I mean, we need people on the council, maybe not more people, but at least several people with a financial background, which I have. And I think that I love working with figures, so I like to go through the budget and see what's exactly going on there. And I know we don't have the power to do anything, but at least we could at least have a conversation and let the citizens of Beltway more involved.
Back to the coming vote for the new charter, or charter changes. Yeah. What kind of charter change do you think we should put in there
things I'd like to see,
strengthen the city council?
One thing I was thinking about is we have to run for re-election every 2 years now. And I was talking to some people, and somebody said, "Why don't we do 4 years?" I guess you can't do 4 years because there's a state law regarding that, but we could do 3 years. So what I'd like to see maybe is change the councilors, make them rotating even maybe, and make them 3 years. I mean, that's just on top of my head. I have to talk to people, but I mean, that's maybe one way. At least people don't have to always worry about running for re-election.
If you're going to lengthen the tour of city councilors, You're going to be in favor of some sort of term limits?
That's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm considering it. I mean, if we had 3-year terms, I think it would be something to consider. I don't want to. I don't want to say, oh, I only want to have 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, but I would consider it. I mean, on a national stage, I do support term limits. Yeah. But I mean, it's a very difficult question. But I would say, I mean, if we made the term long enough, I mean, in other words, it's very hard to get people to run for local government. Because of the political climate. Also, the pay levels are really low for city councils right now compared. But we're all public servants. We don't do it for the money.
Yeah, it's a part-time job.
We don't do it for the money. But I think that maybe if we get maybe a little better quality, people would run more. If there was term limits, because that way people wouldn't be so entrenched in government. So
I think that's one of the things that's a deterrent to get people running. You're running against somebody who's been in there for 10, 15 years. They've got an established organization. They've got their following. And it's hard to break into that as a newcomer.
Yeah, I understand.
It shows up this time around where most of the activity is with the City Councilor at Large, because both Paul Guanci and Tim Flaherty announced early on they weren't going to run for re-election. Yeah. Same thing showed up in Ward 3.
Yes.
Because Stacey Ames says she's not going to run for re-election. So when you have open seats, it draws a crowd.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I'd be, say like if we had 3-year terms, I mean, just on top of my head, don't lock me down, to say you could serve for like 4 terms or something like that, 4 3-year terms, something like that. I mean, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, this is probably going to be controversial, but I mean, I think that you're right. I mean, it has to be, like I said before, it has to be balanced. And then you have to make it fair and equal for everyone to get in. And the problem is if somebody's already in, I'm finding it myself, I mean, there are certain, I mean, one thing you find when you run for election, I'm new at this, and I'm finding that, I mean, certain people are backing certain people and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it more difficult when you're a newcomer like myself. I mean, because it makes it hard. Because that's also, it's very hard to raise money for campaigns, I'm finding. Because what happens is people are already aligned with it. People say, I decided to run fairly recently. I didn't decide years ago. I didn't start setting up a campaign. And one of the things I found also is that you almost need a lawyer to set up the campaign finance laws and that sort of thing. I find it's difficult even to advertise sometimes because there's so many rules and regulations. I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to have to hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
But luckily I have common sense and I can research things on the internet, and that's helped me out quite a bit.
Yeah, it is made to be a difficult process under the guise of we want to do it right, whatever that all means. Yeah. And I think the issue you brought up earlier of regulations and how much the city gets into everything that gets done. Yeah, you like to have the city in charge and know what's going on, but at the same time, you don't want to get it to the point of stifling development, or only kind of development you can have is one of these giant condos or apartment complexes like we've built on Rantoul Street. And then the next question is, what do you think about expanding that kind of development into Cabot Street?
Be honest with you, I mean, I think we've had, I mean, I don't want to come across as anti-development. However, I think the city's at capacity. I mean, for if we want to continue the quality of life we have. I mean, I have nothing against, I want people to be able to move to the city. I don't want to put a moratorium, but I do want to see more community-based development. More like, in other words, if you're going to develop something, don't take a place that used to have one house and make it into 4 condos. I mean, maybe you can make it into 2 condos, make it into an in-law apartment, but don't make it so large. Because I saw a lot over on near Tozer Road and I think it's Enon Street. There was a historic house and they moved it. I don't know if you're aware of that. And I don't know how many townhouses are in, but they're putting a whole bunch of townhouses in there.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of development I don't want to see in Beverly.
Okay. Well, I think we're getting down to the time when it's your turn to talk to the audience and
Hi, everybody.
Make it your pitch.
Okay, I really haven't been practicing my pitch, but I will basically say, I grew up in the city of Beverly. I'm a 1977 graduate of Beverly High School. I ran from Memorial Middle School. I went to Brown School in North Beverly. I mean, I understand a lot of residents are new residents, but I know the city like the back of my hand, and I'm very passionate about the city. And I want to serve the city. my mother had a disability. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little choked up here. But what I want to do is I have the strength, the character. I'm honest. I believe in Beverly. I believe we can make it a better place. And if I'm a city councilor, I'll do everything I can to make this a great city.
Super. Okay. Well, I hope you are successful in your campaign. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for watching us. And we will continue to have discussions with the candidates. And as Elliot Margolis mentioned the last time, the most important thing of all is get out there and vote. And by the way, study the candidates so you know what you're voting for. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.